Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Chem with Dishika, and this time we are having the questions of JEE Mains. So here we'll be discussing each and every question that took place from 27 January to 1st Feb, and we'll be discussing all the two question papers, that is in total 14 question papers of JEE Mains. So here we'll be discussing certain tips and tricks. So even if you don't know the concept behind the question, you can use these tricks in order to answer that question. So please do watch this video till the end, and in case you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do subscribe to my channel, and let's move ahead with the video. So here we have the first question of JEE Mains that it has asked, and it is related to organic chemistry. So it is asking you which of the following has highest enol content. So in order to answer this question, firstly you must know what is enol. So whenever we study carbonyl chemistry, we have two forms. First is the keto form. So in general, if I represent any of the keto form, this is your keto form and this is your enol form. So these two forms are interchangeable to each other, and these two are also called as the tautomers, right? So in the question it is asking that which of the following will be having the highest enol content, which means that which of them would exist in this form in greater ratio as compared to the keto ratio. So here you have to look for the driving factors such as aromaticity. So the one which after the conversion keto to enol form will be aromatic in nature will be more stable, right? And the one which will be more stable will exist in the highest enol content. So all of the options are given in the keto form. If I talk about the very first option, then here if you convert this form into your enol form, then you will be getting OH double bond, OH double bond and OH double bond, right? So here now it becomes a 6 pi electron system, and it is aromatic in nature, which means that it is highly stable, right? So it looks similar to the structure of benzene. It is basically your substituted benzene. So this one will be having the highest enol content. But if I have to compare it with the others, so here if you will see 3 OH would be existing here simultaneously, and this form would be relatively lesser stable as compared to this form, right? And if I talk about this form, so here if I convert this form into, it will look like this. So this is comparatively unstable as compared to this. So basically if you have to compare between keto and enol, keto forms are usually more stable as compared to enol form. This is related to the thermodynamic factors that you must have studied. So here also if I have to compare to the, if I have to convert it into the enol form, so basically I have to make it aromatic, right? There must be some very strong factor, driving factor, which will make that compound to exist in the enol form, right? So that driving factor here in the case of cyclic compounds is usually seen to be aromatic factor, right? So in this case also, if you will convert it into your enol form, it will look like OH and a double bond here, and similarly here OH and a double bond to this side, right? So this will be a 4 pi electron system, and also it is not aromatic because these two atoms are sp3 hybridized. So which means that this compound is not planar completely in nature, so which means that it will be non-aromatic compound, and hence it will be less stable as compared to the compound that is already given to you. So here if I have to talk about the correct option, the correct option would be my first part, okay? So here the correct option would be my first part. So I hope you understood this question, what we have done and what approach we have used in order to solve this. Let us now move on to our next question. So here again this is of the organic chemistry question, which is from the topic of GOC. So here if you know the basic concept of GOC, that is acidity, basicity, then you will be able to answer this question. So basically it is asking which of the following is most acidic. So in order to answer this question, the one which is more acidic, it is directly proportional to the stability of the conjugate base. So what you have to see is you have to remove the proton, you have to form the negative ion, and if the negative ion is more stable, right, if the negative ion is more stable, then it will be more acidic. Okay, so basically here stable, you can write here stable the negative ion, more acidic will be your compound. So they are directly proportional to each other. So here you know what does NO2 does. So basically NO2 is an electron withdrawing group, right? So it will withdraw the electron towards itself through -m and -I effect, and it will stabilize the negative charge that is formed after the loss of acidic proton, right? So here if you will see, the common part is OH. So here you have to compare the acidity of the proton that is written on the OH part, right? So here let me just write it again. So here you will be having NO2 group. So this NO2 group is, let me just write it here, this NO2 group withdraws electron through -m and -I effect. Okay, so basically here if I am talking about the acidity, this acidity is related between O and H. Okay, so you have to remove the proton, and after the removal of proton from OH, the one which will be formed, the negative ion will be the alkoxide ion, that is RO negative ion. Okay, so you have to stabilize this. So more the number of electron withdrawing groups, more will be the stability of the negative charge. Okay, so here Bu, if I talk about Bu, it is an electron donating group, right? So since it is an electron donating group, it will donate the electrons, and the electron density will be increased, and hence the negative charge would be destabilized, right? So here this won't be our correct option. Next, if you will see in the second, third and fourth part, here in the second part OMe group is given, and OMe group is again electron donating in nature. So since it is electron donating group, so that is why it will donate the electrons, and hence again this negative charge which is formed would be destabilized, and hence this won't be the acidic proton. So this would be incorrect. If I talk about the third and fourth option, then here in third there is only one NO2 group, whereas in fourth there are two NO2 groups which are at ortho and para position. Since NO2 group is an electron withdrawing group through -m and -I effect, as a result of which it will withdraw the electron towards itself and will stabilize the negative charge. Therefore, here if it is going to stabilize the negative charge which is formed on the oxygen O negative ion, so this option would be my correct choice. Why? Because here NO2 group is present at ortho and para position, and through ortho and para position it will stabilize the negative charge. Here only one NO2 group is given, which means only at para position, so the effect would be less as compared to the fourth one, and therefore third would be incorrect. So I hope you understood this question. Let us now move on to our another question. So here we have, which of the following cannot show variable oxidation state? So basically it is from your chapter, that is periodic properties, right? That is from inorganic chemistry. So here if I talk about the variable oxidation state concept, then here you know that the element which has the tendency to show variable oxidation state must have d orbitals, right? In the d block elements, when you study the characteristic, their most significant characteristic is that they are able to show variable oxidation state due to the presence of empty d orbitals. So in empty d orbitals, they can accommodate electrons, right? They are able to accept electrons, and they are able to donate electrons, due to which they are able to show variable oxidation state. So here if I talk about the options, then basically here group 17 elements are given, that is fluorine, chlorine, bromine and iodine. So all three of them, chlorine, bromine and iodine, contain d orbitals, whereas fluorine does not contain d orbitals, right? It does not contain d orbitals, due to which it is not able to show variable oxidation state. Also, if you talk about the electronegativity, then fluorine is highly electronegative in nature, and this is also one of the reasons, due to its small size and high electronegativity, that it is not able to show the variable oxidation state. So it is quite an easy question. So I hope you all must have done this question correctly. So the correct choice would be my fluorine. Okay. So let's now move on to our next question. So next question is again from organic chemistry, and this is a direct question taken out from your NCERT. So if you will open your NCERT and if you look at the examples, so there you can find this example written as it is, and this is taken exactly out from there. So here you have to keep the basic things in your mind, that is while naming the compound, what are the basic steps that you have to do. So in IUPAC naming, the very first step is the numbering. So here if I talk about the numbering part, then this is the compound which is given to you. So now firstly you have to number it in such a way so that the most substituted part gets the least number. So here if I talk about this and this, so where to start the numbering? So you have to start the numbering from here, because you have to number lower. You have to basically give preference to that part of your compound which is containing the more number of substituents. So since two substituents are here located at this position as compared to the third position which is containing only one substituent, therefore you will start the numbering from there, and you will number it in such a way such that all the substituent gets the least set of numbers. So the least set of numbers are 1 and 3. Right. So now you have to write this in such a way so that alphabetically the substituents, you have to basically write it in the alphabetical order. Alphabetically, which comes first has to be written first. So here this group is basically containing 2 carbon chain, 2 carbon atom. So this is your ethyl group, right? And this is containing 2 methyl groups, right? So basically here E comes first alphabetically as compared to methyl. So you have to number it like 3 ethyl. So firstly you have to write 3 ethyl. Then at first position, since 2 methyl groups are present, so you have to write 1,1 dimethyl. Then you have a 6-member cyclic compound, so therefore you are going to use the prefix cyclo, and for 6 you are going to use hexane. So it will be 3-ethyl 1,1-dimethyl cyclohexane. That is my second option. Okay, so I hope you understood this question, how we have done this. So the correct choice would be 3-ethyl 1,1-dimethyl cyclohexane. Okay, so you just need to understand this. First you have to give preference to that part of the compound which is containing more number of substituents, and second you have to write it in the alphabetical order. Okay, so let's now. Okay, so here we have another question which says the given compound is. So basically this is also from your organic chemistry, and this tests your general knowledge. So basically here one of the compound is given, the structure is given to you, and it is asking what kind of compound it is. So in which category basically you are going to put it in, right? So here let us see the options. The first option is aromatic. So here the first and second option gets directly eliminated out. Why? Because here in order to be aromatic or anti-aromatic, all the compounds must be sp2 hybridized. So all of the compounds, all of the elements that I should say, they must be sp2 hybridized. So these 4 are basically sp3 hybridized. This structure is not planar, right? So you cannot classify them as aromatic or anti-aromatic. Those only satisfy for the compounds which are planar in nature, where all the atoms are sp2 hybridized in that compound. Now if I talk about third and fourth option, then the fourth option also gets directly eliminated out, because this is a cyclic compound. Cyclic compounds are those which are cyclic in nature, right, which are basically round which have a specific closing shape, right? So basically here this is cyclic compound, so this fourth option also gets directly eliminated out. So even if you don't know what is a cyclic compound or what are alicyclic compound, then you can directly eliminate out the options and you can directly tick mark the correct option that what are alicyclic compound. So basically alicyclic means that it is made up of two words, that is aliphatic and cyclic. So the compounds which are cyclic in nature and which are aliphatic. So aliphatic means which are unsaturated compounds. Unsaturation means the presence of double or triple bonds, right? So if your compound is cyclic in nature and it is containing double and triple bonds, then we classify them under the category of alicyclic compound. So this compound is alicyclic in nature, right? So the correct option would be my third one. Now let us move on to our sixth question. So the sixth question says, which of the following is a polar molecule? So here four options are given, and even if you don't know or are confused between these options, then you can directly eliminate them out. So if I talk about the first option, so for polarity you have to check the dipole moment, right? So the one which is having non-zero dipole moment, that is here mu is not equals to 0, would be classified as the polar molecule. So CH2 is basically symmetrical in nature and hydrocarbons are non-polar only. So this option gets directly eliminated out. This is a non-polar molecule. If I talk about the second option, CHCl3, then here for CHCl3 you know the structure, that here it is a tetrahedral shaped geometry, right, and it has a net dipole moment. So for this compound mu is not equals to 0, and hence my correct option would be my second one. Even if you don't know this, then you must have studied that perfect tetrahedral and perfect octahedral compounds are non-polar in nature. Okay, so all the tetrahedral and octahedral compounds which is having no lone pair repulsion or anything else, they are non-polar in nature. So CCl4 and CH4 are perfect tetrahedral geometries, due to which they are classified under the category of non-polar molecules, and hence third and fourth options would be my incorrect one only, and my correct option would be CHCl3. Alright, so I hope you understood this question, that even if you don't know the concept, how to eliminate them out. Now let us move on to our next question, which is basically from inorganic chemistry, and here it is asking, in which of the following compounds central atom has +4 oxidation state. So basically you need to find the oxidation state over here, and you have to use your simple oxidation state method in order to find the oxidation state of the central metal atom that has been asked. So if I talk about SO3, then the central metal atom in all of these compounds is sulfur. So here one oxygen carries a negative of 2 charge. So here if you calculate, let the oxidation state of sulfur be X in this case, and since 3 oxygen are present, so you will multiply it by 3, and all over the atom is neutral, so you will equate it to 0, and this will come out to be +6. So here the sulfur is having +6 oxidation state, which is why this option is incorrect. Next, if I talk about this option, then here it is having 2 plus X minus 6 is equals to 0. So here the oxidation state comes out to be +4, and hence the correct option would be my second one. If I talk about H2S2O7, so this is nothing but your oleum, and this contains your peroxy linkage. So you can calculate the oxidation state similarly here also in the case of sulfur, and here also in the case of barium sulfate it exists as SO4 2- ion. So here also it is having the maximum oxidation state of sulfur, that is +6, so this option would be incorrect. Similarly third and fourth would be incorrect, and my correct choice would be H2SO3. So I hope you understood this question. This was quite an easy question wherein you just need to find the oxidation state, and hence you will get your answer. Let us now move on to our next question. So our next question basically belongs from the chapter that is atomic structure, and here the formula that you usually do it very thoroughly, that is the radius formula, the velocity formula, belongs to those formula only. So basically it is asking, it is given that radius of third stationary orbit is r, so r3 is given to be r, and it is asking you find out the value for R4. So when you study atomic structure here, for monoatomic species, the radius comes out to be Rn is directly proportional to n square over z. So this is the formula that you use, and if it is for the same atom, the z is going to be same. So the only proportionality factor is going to be n square, right? So you just have to use this concept in order to answer this question. So you have to find the value for R4. So R4, if I simply take the ratio R4 over R3 is equals to R4 over R, because it is given to be R, R3 is given to be R, that is equals to, you will just simply square it, 4 square over 3 square, right? So it is going to be 16 over 9. You will take this R to the right hand side and you will be getting R4 is equals to 16 by 9 R3. Okay, that is R, which is 16 R by 9. Okay, so here the correct option would be 16 R by 9. So that's how you are going to do your 8th question. Here you just need to see that Rn is directly proportional to n square, and using this you just simply need to take the ratios of these two radius and you will be able to find the value for 4th stationary orbit in terms of R. Okay, let us now move on to our another question, that is our 9th question. So this is also from organic chemistry and it is also from the topic that is GOC. So here it is asking you to find out the strongest Bronsted base. So to answer this question, first you need to know what is the strongest Bronsted base. So the species which is containing lone pair of electron or is a acceptor of proton, right? So which is acceptor of proton or has a tendency to accept proton is classified under the category of Bronsted base. So here you can directly eliminate out 3 options. How you are going to do that? If you'll see, this nitrogen is involved in resonance with 2 species, 2 aromatic species, 2 cyclic rings, right? So this has the least electron density because here the electrons are involved in resonance from both the sides. Now if I talk about the second option, here also the lone pair present on the nitrogen atom is involved in resonance with the benzene ring. So here also the electron density is reduced. Next, if I talk about this nitrogen, so this nitrogen also has delocalized lone pair of electrons because it is involved in resonance with the double bond of the ring in order to make it aromatic, that is a 6 pi electron system, right? Whereas in this case, this nitrogen is sp3 hybridized and the lone pair of this nitrogen is not involved in any resonance, right? So basically here this will be the strongest Bronsted base because out of these 4, only this nitrogen atom is not involved in resonance and has a localized pair of lone pair of electron, which means that it has the highest electron density and it is a acceptor of electron, right? It can accept a proton very easily because of its high nucleophilicity. That is why the correct option would be my 4th one. So I hope you understood this question. You can eliminate out directly from looking at the options, that in the 3 options the lone pair are involved in resonance, whereas in 1 the lone pair is not involved in resonance, and the one which is not involved in resonance would be containing the highest electron density. Okay. Next we have our 10th question. So in 10th question it is asking you the electronic configuration of neodymium. So basically it is having the atomic number that is 60 and it is your F block elements, right? So even if you don't know how to write the configuration, what you can do is you can just remember the atomic number of all the noble gases, right? So here basically 57 to 71 comes under the first series, that is your lanthanide series, right? So here xenon has got an atomic number of 54. All you need to do is you just need to remember the atomic number of xenon. Even if you remember the atomic number of xenon, you can directly eliminate out the options that are given and can find the configuration. So here xenon is having atomic number of 54. So you just, to make it 60, you need to add 6 more, right? So here you have to fill 6 more electrons, and that you have to see which is giving you a total of 6. So here it is 4f4 and 6s2. So 4 plus 2 makes up a total of 6, which means 54 plus 6 is equals to 60. A total of 60 electrons has been filled. In this case, you can directly eliminate out because only one electron has been filled. So a total of 55 electrons is present over here. So this option is incorrect. Next, if I talk about this option, so here you have 2 plus 2, which is 4 extra electrons. So you can directly eliminate out here also. Here it is given 4f4, 5f4, 4d1. So 4 plus 1 is equals to 5, which means that here a total of 55 electrons, a total of 59 electrons has been present. So that is why this option would be incorrect. We need 6 more electrons only, and there is only one such option in which 6 electrons has been filled. So the correct option would be my first one. So this is a short trick in case your options are given to be easy, so you can use it and can see whether it is giving you your answer or not. But in case if the options are looking similar to each other, then you have to see that here for lanthanides, the subshells that you have to use is 4f, 6s and 5d. Right? So first you need to fill it in the valence shell, that is 6s. So here it will be 54 plus 2, 56 electrons. Now you have to fill 4 more electrons, and those 4 more electrons would go into 4f, and hence the configuration would be xenon 4f4, 6s2, 5d0. Okay, so this is the configuration in the case of Nd, which is neodymium, right? So I hope you understood this question. Let us now move on to our another question, which is our 11th question. So this question is basically from your laboratory testing and organic chemistry. It shows that it states that ethanol shows turbidity with Lucas reagent. So what is Lucas reagent? That is also given, that is conc HCl plus anhydrous ZnCl2, and it is asking you in what time it will show the turbidity. Okay, so ethanol is having this structure, which is CH3CH2OH. It is a 1 degree alcohol, right? So 2 carbon, 1 degree alcohol, and here we have to see that in what time it is going to show the turbidity. So we know that in Lucas reagent, what is the intermediate that is formed? So after the loss of OH, your carbocation is formed. More the stable carbocation, more is the speed of showing the turbidity. That you have to remember. Okay, because here the Cl minus comes up and basically the substitution takes place. So here if the carbocation is stable, then it is going to show you the turbidity at a faster rate as compared to the another carbocation. So if I compare the rate, then 3 degree shows the fastest turbidity, then 2 degree and then 1 degree. Okay, so even 1 degree alcohols basically show turbidity only upon heating. Why? Because the carbocation is extremely very less stable as compared to 3 degree and 2 degree. That is why here the answer would be my third part, that is upon heating. So you just need to check what kind of alcohol it is. So for 3 degree alcohols, it shows immediately, that is after the turbidity would be shown immediately. And if it is a 2 degree alcohol, then here the turbidity appears after 5 to 7 minutes, and if it is 1 degree, then the turbidity is only shown upon heating. So the correct answer would be upon heating. Okay, so let's now move on to our another question. So this question says, which type of linkage is present in nucleotide between base and sugar? So here if I talk about the phosphate base and the pentose sugar that we have to answer, then here the N-glycosidic linkage is present. So this question is from the topic biomolecules, right? And here you study the structure of DNA, RNA, wherein you study that how the bases and sugars are related to each other. So the peptide linkage is present in amino acids, right? So the peptide linkage is present between C double bond O and NH. This kind of peptide linkages are present between amino acids, right? So this is going to be my incorrect option because this is not the linkage that is present. Glycosidic linkage is not present. N-glycosidic linkage is present, indicating that the point of attachment is through nitrogen. right? So this option would be incorrect and my correct choice would be the third one. Okay, similarly the amide linkage would be incorrect, so this option is also incorrect. Let us now move on to our another question. The next question says a complex with maximum spin angular momentum. So basically 4 options has been given and you have to tell that which one of them is having the maximum spin angular momentum. So spin angular momentum is basically written as under root n into n plus 2. So the complex which is having the highest value of unpaired electrons, here n is the number of unpaired electrons, highest will be the value of spin angular momentum. So you just need to check the compound which is containing the highest unpaired electrons. So in Fe(F6) 3-, here iron is present in +3 oxidation state and the configuration for iron in +3 oxidation state is 3d6 4s2, it will be 3d5 4s0, right? So here it is having 5 unpaired electrons. Let us now check another all the options. Here also iron is present in +3 oxidation state and the configuration would be argon 3d5 4s0. No, here since Cn is a strong ligand, so since it is a strong ligand it will pair up all the electrons, and here F negative being the weak field ligand will not pair up the electrons, as a result of which you will get 5 unpaired electrons. But in this case, since the pairing is going to occur, so you will be getting 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, right? So these two will pair up and these two will pair up and you will be left with only 1 unpaired electron. So here you will be getting if you will draw it in T2G and EG form, so basically you will be getting the value of N as 1. So this is basically your 3D5 and that's how you will be getting the configuration. If I talk about FeH2O6 2+, so here you are having the configuration of Fe in +2 oxidation state. Fe in +2 oxidation state is basically 3d6 4s0, and here also you will be getting the number of unpaired electron that is equals to 4, which is less as compared to FeF6 3-. Next, if I talk about vanadium 2+, so vanadium 2+ is argon 3d3 4s0, right? So here the number of unpaired electron is 3, so the highest unpaired electron are present in first case, that is why it will be having the highest spin angular momentum, and hence the correct choice would be my first one. So I hope you understood this question, how we have to do it. You just need to remember all the electronic configuration, you have to write them, and you also have to check that which of them is a strong field ligand and which of them is a weak field ligand, and accordingly which one of them will get paired up and which one of them will not get paired up, right? So these are the concepts that you have to use while solving this question. Let us now move on to our another question, that is calculate the temperature in Kelvin at which kinetic energy of monoatomic gaseous molecule is equal to 0.414 electron volt. So here you have to use two concepts. First, you need to know the energy of a monoatomic gas, that for a monoatomic gas the energy is equals to 3/2 kT, and this K is equals to R over Na. Okay. So here you have to equate the kinetic energy that is given to you, which is 0.414 electron volt. Since you need to calculate the temperature over here, how I have written this formula? First I have read the energy of monoatomic gaseous molecule. So I know that for monoatomic gaseous molecule the energy is equals to 3/2 kT, right? And here if I know the value of kinetic energy, I can equate all of them in order to find the value for T. Now this energy is given to you in electron volts, so you need to convert it in joules, because here you have to take the value of R in joules and you have to cancel them out so that you get your unit in Kelvin. So you have to also take care of these units while solving this question. So 0.414 into 1.6 into 10 raised to the power minus 19. This conversion factor you have to use in order to convert it into joules, and then you have to equate it, that is 3/2 into R in joules is 8.314 Na is your Avogadro's number, which is 6.022 into 10 raised to the power 23 into temperature. Okay, so when you will solve this, you will get your answer near about 3198.98 something Kelvin, which is nearly equals to 3199 kelvins. Okay, so the correct answer would be your first one. You can solve this and check this, but all I want to say in this question is that you have to take care of the units, because here temperature has to be in Kelvin, so you have to cancel out all the rest units. Okay, so joules cancel out, per mole cancel out, and that's how you can check your answer. Okay, so let's now move on to our another question, that is our 15th question. So here it is asking a solution of two volatile components showing negative deviation from Rawls' law shows. So basically here you know that the negative deviation case from Rawls' law. If you look at the option here, it is talking about the vapor pressure and the boiling point, right? So we know that vapor pressure and boiling point are inversely proportional to each other, right? If the vapor pressure increases, the boiling point decreases, and vice versa happens. So in the negative deviation, we know that the net pressure of the system decreases, right? So basically here the vapor pressure decreases in this case, in the case of negative deviation, and increases in the case of positive deviation. So the boiling point, since it is inversely proportional, so the boiling point will increase, right? So even if you know this, that vapor pressure and boiling point are inversely proportional to each other, then you can eliminate out two options directly. That is decrease in vapor pressure, boiling point decreases, which is incorrect. Increase in vapor pressure, boiling point increases. So this is also incorrect, because they states that vapor pressure and boiling point are directly proportional, which is not the case. Now you just need to check in the negative deviation, basically your vapor pressure decreases, as a result of which your boiling point increases. So that is why your first option would be the correct one. So I hope you understood this question. Let us now move on to our another question, which is during SN1 reaction, which of the following statement is correct? So basically SN1 reaction is your reaction which is a first order kinetics reaction, that is it depends only on the concentration of alkyl halide that you have taken, right? So here you know the key points, that here racemization occurs. What is racemization? That both retention and inversion occurs, right? So is it 100% racemization or almost racemization? So the answer would be almost racemization, because in organic chemistry nothing is fixed. They can be plus or minus to some extent, but if I have to see, then the correct choice would be almost racemization, because sometimes it is possible that 51% of inversion compound is formed, and sometimes it is also possible that 51% of retention is formed. So that's how that's why the answer would be almost racemization. Okay, whereas in the case of SN2 reaction only inversion occurs, right? So this was a direct question from NCERT, so I hope you understood this question. Next we have boron. Assertion and reason are given, and you have to tick mark the correct one. So it is saying boron is a hard element, and reason is boron has unusually high melting point. Then it is definitely correct. Boron is hard element and it has also very high melting point. Both of them are correct, but if I have to state the reason behind its hardness, then we do not see it by the high melting point. Hardness is melting point is basically a result of hardness only, right? It is hard, which is why it is having unusually high melting point, and that's why the reason is incorrect, but both of them are correct, right? So assertion is correct, reason is correct, but R does not explains A. So the correct choice would be my second one. Okay, so here we have another question, that is our 18th question, and it is a direct question from your NCERT again. If you know the complex, then you can easily answer this question. So this is one of the most important reactions that your teachers must have told you very frequently while you were studying D block elements, that you have to remember this. So here PbCrO4, it is when treated with NaOH, gives you two compounds. First is Na2CrO4 and second one is the complex that it is talking about, that is PbOH whole 4 and here it is Na2. Alright, so it is basically Na2PbOH whole 4 and this is the complex that it is talking about. Now if you remove 2Na from this, you will be getting your anionic part, because if you remove the positive part, so to make it neutral you need two negatives, right? So it will be 2 negative, right? So this is the complex that has been formed after the reaction of lead chromate with NaOH. So it is basically dianionic because it is containing 2 negative charge and the coordination number is 4. So the correct answer would be my dianionic with coordination number 4. Alright, so you here you just need to see what kind of reaction it is taking place and what is the exact complex that has been formed. Okay. So let us now move on to our another question. So here we have another question, that is our 19th question, and it says which of the following configuration has the strongest metallic bonding. So here you have to tell which of them is containing the strongest metallic bonding, and it is from the chapter that is d block elements. So the one which is containing the highest unpaired electrons. So basically unpaired electrons is directly proportional to the strongest metallic bonding. Strongest metallic bonding. You have to just check which of them is containing the highest number of unpaired electrons. So here if I look at this configuration, then how many unpaired electrons are present in this case? Just draw this 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. So it is containing 3 unpaired electrons, whereas in the case of second we have how many unpaired electrons? 1 from this and 5 from this, 6 unpaired electrons. Here we are having how many unpaired electrons? 3d6, 4 unpaired electrons, and here we are having 3 unpaired electrons. So the maximum number of unpaired electrons are present in the second case, which is argon 3d5 4s1, that is n is equals to 6, which is why the correct answer would be my second one. Okay, so let us now move on to our another question. So here also assertion and reason are given and you have to tick mark the correct one. So it says all S block elements are found in nature. Yes, it is definitely true. They are found in nature in some abundance. And 4f and 5f series are kept below the periodic table. So yes, that you must have noticed also that the F block elements are kept below the periodic table. So here both of them are true. But if I talk about the correct explanation, then this reason is not the correct explanation of the assertion. So the correct answer would be my second one, because all the S block elements are found in nature because of their abundance, right? Because they do have some abundance due to which they are found in nature. Alright, so I hope you understood all of the questions that we have discussed up till now. So these were all your MCQ questions. Next we are going to discuss the part B part of our basically question paper that has been designed. So since this is a very recent addition to this question paper, so I would just like to tell you this section B consists of the numerical value type questions. So 20 questions are the MCQ type that you have to attempt, and out of these 10 questions, so basically in this section 10 questions has been asked, and out of this 10 questions you just need to attempt 5 questions. Okay, so you just need to attempt all those 5 questions that you are sure about, and here you have to write your value in the numerical answer type value, right? So basically here you have to report it up till 2 decimals. So you have to round off your answer to 2 decimal points and then you have to write that. So there is a specific range. If your answer lies within that specific range, then you get full points, otherwise you get no point. So that's how this section has been designed. So here all the questions would be your numerical answer type questions. Okay, so usually they are quite easy and they are giving you the value which are direct. So usually they are not related to any decimals. So in case if you are getting very complex calculations or something, then just pinpoint that question again and look at each and every step you are going through. Okay, so sometimes it is possible that you must have used another formula or another complex method that is even not required. These questions are tricky ones that you just have to use your mental ability in order to answer these, right? So let us now move on to this section, and the very first question that we are having is find out the sum of bond order of CO and NO plus. So basically here it is asking you CO and NO plus. So if I talk about CO, how many electrons does it have? It has 6 plus 8, that is 14 electrons. And similarly, if I talk about NO plus, then it has the atomic number of nitrogen is 7, then it is 8, and then it is minus 1. So it is again 14 electrons. So here you can see that they are isoelectronic species, right? And for isoelectronic species, the bond order is same, right? Because here all of them are filled in the same order. So if you'll fill up the electrons, you know the bond order of CO is 3, right? So the bond order of NO plus would be also 3. So if you'll just add them up, that is 3 plus 3, it is going to give you the answer, that is 6. So here the answer would be 6. So as I already told you that here usually the answers that you are going to get is integer type answers only. So you can just check them out and then can report it. Okay, so the correct answer would be 6 in this case. Let us now move on to our another question, that is our 22nd question. So this is basically from your mole concept. So it has given you an equation, that is the oxidation of methane. So we know that whenever a hydrocarbon is burnt, then it gives you CO2 and H2O. So the balanced equation is given, and first you need to check whether the equation is balanced or not. In this question, balancing is already done, so you need not balance it. It is asking you the mass of CH4 that is consumed for the formation of 22 gram of carbon dioxide. So since the equation is balanced, what I am going to do is I have to report the mass. So I need not go into the moles. So there are two methods to it. First, you do it in terms of moles and then convert it into mass. Second, you just need to report it indirectly in mass. You have to save your time also. So just use the unitary method over here. If you'll calculate the mass of CH4, it comes out to be 16 gram, and if you'll calculate the mass of CO2, it comes out to be 44 gram. So if I use the unitary method, 44 gram of CO2 requires 16 gram of methane. So it has given you 22 gram of CO2. So 22 gram of CO2 will require how many? 16 over 44 into 22, right? So it is basically 16 over 2, that is 8 gram of CH4. So the answer would be 8 grams. Okay, so that's how you can solve this question. If you don't know in terms of mass, then you can go into moles, that 1 mole of CO2 is formed from 1 mole of CH4, right? So first convert this CO2, this mass into moles, that is 22 over molar mass, which is 44, which is half, which is 0.5 moles, right? So 0.5 mole of CO2 will be formed from 0.5 mole of methane, and 0.5 of mole of methane means 0.5 into 16, which is 8 grams. So that is quite a lengthy method which we will not use obviously, because we have to save our time also. So you can directly go ahead in terms of mass. Okay, so the correct answer would be 8. Let us now move on to our another. Okay, so let us now move on to our next question. So this question says that find out the number of stereoisomers obtained when 3-methyl-hextone reacts with HBr in the presence of peroxide. Looks similar? You must have heard this word HBr in the presence of peroxide. So whenever you take an alkene and you have to add this halogen acid to it, so two cases arises. First in the presence of peroxide, second in the absence of peroxide. So the Kharash effect or the anti-Kharash effect or the anti-Markovnikov rule. Remember? So this is the question from that part only, wherein you have to use the anti-Markovnikov rule. So here if I talk about 3-methyl hex-2-ene, then it has the structure like this: a 6 carbon long chain, a double bond at second position, and CH3 over here. So you can complete the valencies by adding hydrogens to them, right? So it is CH2, CH2, and here you are having one hydrogen atom and you are adding HBr to it in the presence of peroxide, right? So in the presence of peroxide, what happens is the negative part here, the negative part of this attacking nucleophile gets attached to that carbon atom which is containing more number of hydrogen atoms, right? So between this carbon and this carbon, to whom Br negative is going to attach, that is the question, and that is why I made a point over here that here we have to use the anti-Markovnikov rule. That is, the Br negative is going to attach to that carbon atom which is containing more number of hydrogen atoms, right? And the hydrogen atom is going to attach to that carbon which is containing less number of hydrogen atoms, right? So Br negative will get attached over here and hydrogen will get attached over here. What is the compound that is going to form? That is HBr, then we have CH3, hydrogen over here, then CH2, CH2, CH3. Now come back to the question. Once you have made the product, come back to the question, and it is asking the number of stereoisomers that are obtained. So in order to identify the stereoisomers, first you need to identify the number of stereocenters. So in order to identify stereocenters, you must know what is a chiral carbon. So here a chiral carbon is that carbon which is containing all the 4 groups differently. So basically here if I talk about this carbon atom which I have marked it with asterisk, so here all the 4 groups are different. So this is one of the stereocenters, and similarly this is one of the stereocenters where all the 4 groups of the carbon atom is different. So when all the 4 valencies are different, then we call it as a chiral carbon or as a stereocenter. Okay, so all rest all carbons are having 2 hydrogens or 3 hydrogens, that is the similar kind of group, which is why they are achiral. And here in order to calculate the stereoisomers, since this is unsymmetrical molecule, so you will use the formula 2 raised to the power n. So here the value of n, that is the number of stereocenters, is equals to 2. So the stereoisomers would be 2 raised to the power 2, which is equals to 4. So the correct answer would be equals to 4. Okay, so this is how you are going to do this question. I hope you understood this. First you have to react your compound, that is 3-methyl hex-2-ene with HBr in the presence of peroxide using anti-Markovnikov rule, and then you have to identify the stereocenters, apply it in the formula, and then you will be able to get your answer. Let us now move on to our another question, that is, among the following number of meta-directing groups are. So several groups are given to you and you have to tell which of them are meta-directing. So basically all the electron withdrawing groups or the groups that have an influence to take electrons towards themselves are basically meta-directing in nature, and for that -m effect should be dominant. Okay. So here Cn is your electron withdrawing group. So first one is this, that is it is your meta-directing group. NO2 is also your meta-directing group. COH is also your meta-directing group. CH3 is basically your electron donating group. It donates electron through plus H and plus I, right? So it is not your meta-directing group. Instead this is your ortho-para-directing group. Coming back to meta-directing group, SO3H is also your electron withdrawing group. So this is also your meta-directing group. Now NH3+. NH3+, you have to see that in NCERT several reactions, 3 reactions have been given, wherein all the 3 products, ortho, meta and para products are given, and the meta product has been formed significantly, which indicates that it is a meta-directing group. That is why you are going to count it in the meta-directing group. So this would be my fifth choice. But if I talk about fluorine, then all the halogen atoms, they withdraw the electron through minus I, but they donate the electron through plus n. And since mesomeric effect is dominant in nature, due to why they are orthopara directing in nature, and which is why the answer would be equals to 5. Okay, so here the answer is going to be 5 because of the nature of meta directing groups. I hope you understood this question. Let us now move on to our another question. Here we are given the following information about the concentration with initial rate of reaction, and you have to find out the order. Without solving this question, you can answer this. You just need to use some of your senses, that you know that whenever it is a first order reaction, then it is written as K raised to the K into concentration of A, right? Which means that as the rate is increased, in the similar manner the concentration is increased. If you increase your concentration by 2 times, then the rate also get 2 times, which means that they are directly proportional in the case when the order is first order. Similarly, when it is A square, if it is a second order reaction, then in the case of second order reaction, how does it affect? It basically get 2 times, right? And similarly, if it is 3, then it will get 3 times, right? So it will get 2x times. So that's how you need to check the concentration and rate. Now if you will see here, if you are making your concentration 4 times, if you will multiply 0.005 into 4, you will be getting 0.02. So if I have increased my concentration 4 times, then my rate is also increasing 4 times. Just correctly see, if I multiply 7.5 into 4, then I am getting 20 and 30, which is this, and I can write it like 30 into 10 raised to the power minus 4, right? Because here it is given 10 raised to the power minus 4. And if I'll multiply it, I'll be getting this 30. This 10 into 10 raised to the power minus 4 will give me 3 into 10 raised to the power minus 3, which is exactly 4 times, which means that concentration and rate are directly proportional with each other. They are increasing with the same factor. So that is why here the order will be first order. Without solving this question, you can answer this. If you don't want to use this shortcut or you have not understood this, then you can go by long method. Let me just write the long method here also, that here you have to take the ratios. So let us say this is R1 and this is R2. Okay, so you have to take R1 over R2 is equals to concentration, that is 0.005 in the first case, raised to the power n, that is your order that you don't know up till now, and this is 0.02 raised to the power n, and you can substitute the value of R1 and R2. You can take this n as common, okay, and after solving this you can find your answer. So this is the long method that if you wish to use, you can use that. And if you have used this method, you can also cross check it by actually seeing that if you are using that factor, then whether it is giving you the same results as expected or different from the ones that you have expected till now. Okay, so I hope you understood this question. Let us now move on to our another question. Here we have, calculate the number of electron for which n is equals to 4 and s is equals to plus half. So basically in this question what you need to do is, the principal quantum number n is equals to 4 is given to you, and you know that the L values, the possible L values will range from 0 to n minus 1, which means that here the value would be 0 to 3. Okay, so for L is equals to 0, we'll be having 4s orbital. For L is equals to 1, we'll be having 4p. For L is equals to 2, we'll be having 4d. And for L is equals to 3, we'll be having 4f. So these are the possible orbitals or the subshells that are going to present in this electrons, right? Now I have to calculate the number of electrons with only spin plus half, which means that only this kind of spin must be present. So half filled, basically it is asking. So in S we know that 2 electrons can accommodate up to a maximum extent. So here only 1 electron would be present in plus half spin, right? And here 3 electron will be present, here 5 electron will be present, and here 7 electron will be present. So basically the half filled will be the ones which are containing the spin of plus half, right? So if you have not understood this, just understood this, that in s orbital basically an electron exists like this, which is plus half and minus half spin both. But in the question it is asking you have to calculate the number of electrons which are only containing one kind of spin. So only the half filled electrons would be existing in that case, and that's why I have taken exact half of the orbitals. So if you'll just add them up, you will get a total of 16 electrons, and this is going to be the answer, that is 16, that 16 electrons can be accommodated, for which n is equals to 4 and s is equals to plus half. So I hope you understood all of the questions that we have discussed in this. Rest will be discussing the paper in our upcoming videos. So in case if you like my video, please do like, comment and subscribe to my channel. And in case you are having any doubts or any concept that you want to study, you can write in the comment section below, and then we'll meet again in the next video. Till then, happy learning.